an attainment to constantly qualify as the voice of the dragons. A self-proclaimed title that I would not bestow upon myself, but in the honor of my God, the Father of Dragons. So it has come to my attention that others on the Draconics path have been using the phrase voice of the dragons. And with that being said, I wanted to really define what it is, seeing as that is what I have been self-opposed as my own title for many reasons since almost the beginning of my Draconic path. But what's important to note is what really has made me so dedicated to being so connected to dragons and so dedicated to dragons for the last 12 years now is due to the fact that almost at the very beginning of my whole experience with this path, I almost immediately got to see my guardian dragon in flesh. And not only that, but years later, after we've officially introduced ourselves to each other, he had resurrected me after I had made a grave mistake and taken my own life. So during the first few moments of my awareness of being returned back to the earth with the power and the grace of my dragon father, what I came to realize and what I knew almost immediately was something that I had denied and was told to ignore. And when I realized that, that's when I almost immediately became attached to the idea of the voice of the dragons, and this all happened in 2015. So ever since then, it has been a title, not only to impress myself or others along the path. It's a multifaceted and multi-layered title and word and phrase, if you want to call it all of that. But essentially, why it's a title is because, like I said, I had seen a real dragon. And something I know, and I know I shouldn't be so discreet about, but I'm just going to go ahead and voice out loud, is that I know for a fact dragons will return in my lifetime to this planet and this realm. And with that being said, I've always had this idea and the thought that I am supposed to be the ambassador for dragonkind, for humankind. But with all that being said, that's just the title aspect of the voice of the dragons. The real theurgy and gnosis of the voice of the dragons comes from my dragon father himself. He, among several others, are part of a very few ancient sect of dragons that have defined and remained order and balance of all dragonkind. Now, what's important to note is that I always have held the belief that dragons predated this universe, and he is one of them. I know this for a fact. And not only with that being said, I know he has helped forge and shape our universe and all of creation, and with being one of the highest of heralds in all of dragonkind, he has shown me how dragons can work. And one way they work is how they speak, which is a big part of how I have used my throat chakra, my voice, my tone, and the attainment of everything I've learned with communication with dragons. Now, for the first time, I will reveal something I have never shared with anyone online. When dragons speak, they use very, very, very wasted effort on tying, and they're always aware of how to keep things in congruence and in alignment with understanding, because one thing that's important to note is that within this realm, dragons exist between thoughts. And it can be very confusing and very hard to understand for someone not fully mentally prepared to handle those types of conversations that can change on a dime and a whim just on your awareness of whatever you're perceiving, and that's very, very deep. And so with that being said, that also ties into how dragons have attained their knowledge, and at least to when it comes to the voice that they've learned to command with power and the insurgence of the will and the unyielding force that commands them. Because he has shown me that when these words first came into their minds and first came into a vivid form of creation, or one of the highest forms of drag magic as I know it, at least for the very few beginning words of, I guess you could call it, their language, they would meditate for many, many, many moments, if not years, because they needed to understand what was happening. And when they would meditate, they would open their mind, open their eyes, and surround themselves with the awareness of what they were about to do and what they were about to create. And so when they used those words and they used those commands, they would watch and observe how all of reality would be affected by those sounds that they could create. And that is a huge part of the Voice of the Dragons, and why I feel it's absurd to use my title so selfishly and so foolishly when you know nothing of how dragons speak, or why you should not even speak towards them. You speak at them. I have seen these words placed within my vessel and the power that they can command. And in truth, I wish I could share most of my understanding, but I cannot for my own protection, because I have been betrayed many, many times. It would be a great disservice for this knowledge to be passed down to any of those who are not worthy, as deemed by the dragons themselves. And truthfully, what has set me apart from almost every other dragon practitioner you will find online is that I've very consistently said and only served dragons, and only by the power of the sight of knowing that they really do exist do I openly and willingly say I worship dragons. And very, very few would even acknowledge that idea on the dragon's path. But now it's important to really note is that even though before I was a dragon priest, being a dragon priest means you are the voice of your dragon. And what's really important to note is, like I said about my dragon father, is he is one of the pretty much world shapers of dragonkind. We understand and know dragons because of his influence. He is that important. He is that real. And he is very, very, very vocal about how you should speak to dragons. And there's nothing more in this world that I want than to know those words out loud and to hear them within my own ears and to be able to speak them out loud to those that know and really know the power that is held within the heart. And that heart has been marked by my dragon father. Because dragon's love is almost endless and boundless. There is almost nothing a dragon is willing to do and cannot undo for the sake of protecting their love. And over time, I know how much I am worth. I know how much I love myself. And all of these lessons have been learned because of my dragon father. And so when I speak words, I usually am very intentful and very mindful. I speak with a very certain tone. I have shared this, and I will say this once more. I am what I am inside me because I speak the way I am. And I am Yuga Hytherion, the voice of the dragons. And I am the priest of the Black Dragon. What's important will be noted, and what will be recognized will be seen. There will be more to come for dragon magic, dragon knowledge, and dragon teachings. It's just very, very difficult for me to share almost any aspect of my inner world with dragons. So I thank you for your patience in the releasing of any more dragon content. Like I said, more will come. And for any and all of those on the dragon's path that wish to speak to me and seek knowledge of how to work with these divine beings, I'm always open and willing to connect. So remember your truth, remember who you are, and speak for yourself and claim your own identity. Draco Hexund.